This is a podcast from the Office for National Statistics covering earnings by qualification. For a transcript, email info@ons.gov.uk. Firstly, we will look at the average pay for employees aged 22 to 64 in the UK, depending on the highest qualification they obtain. Throughout the podcast, we will refer to the most commonly known qualifications, such as A-level, GCSE, degree, etc. But when we refer to these, they also include qualifications that would be classed as an equivalent. For example, GCSE would include NVQs to Level 2, or A-level includes Scottish Highers. So in the final quarter of 2010, here is the average pay, and we can see that earnings tend to increase as the average qualification increases, which is something that would be expected. For those with no formal qualification, the average was £6.93 per hour, and for those with a minimum of a degree, it stood at £16.10 per hour. So they earned 2.3 times higher than those with no qualifications. Looking back to 1993, the earliest point an equivalent estimate is available, again earnings increased as the qualification level increased, although those with a degree earned 2.5 times higher than those with no qualifications. Now, we will look at how, on average, pay differs between the different qualification levels, using GCSE level to compare with. The GCSE level is those that obtained a GCSE between A* and Grade C. Firstly, starting off with 1993, for the qualifications below GCSE A* to C, and those above, those with no qualification or other qualifications earned less than those educated to around the GCSE level. For those who went on to obtain qualifications beyond GCSE, they earned more. In the final quarter of 1993, those with no qualifications earned 21% less, while those holding a minimum of a degree earned 95% more. Now, plotting the situation in the final quarter of 2010, we can see that the gaps to GCSE have reduced. There is a marginal fall for those with no qualifications, a fall for those with other qualifications, and also for those educated to around A-level, further education, or having a minimum of a degree, they don't earn as much. In 2010, those holding a minimum of a degree earned 85% more. Those educated to around the further education earned 45% more. Around the A-level qualification, they earned 15% more, with 7% less earnings for those with other qualifications and 20% less for those with no qualifications. We will now look at the distribution of pay for those educated to a minimum of a degree. To do this, we put everyone who has this level of qualification in order in terms of their hourly earnings. We can then bring up this line and start it at £0 and finish it at £40. What we find is that in 2010, 10% of people earned up to £7.47. 25% of people with a minimum of a degree earned up to £11. 50% earned up to £16.10, which gives us the midpoint and an average for the group. 75% earned up to £22.35 and 90% earned up to £30.37. Comparing those educated to around the GCSE level, where average pay was around £8.68, we actually find that 15% of people with a degree earn up to this amount, and for those educated to around A-level, with an average of £10, the 20% of people with a minimum of a degree earn up to this amount. Therefore, 1 in 5 graduates earn less than the average for those educated to around the A-level standard. We will now consider the type of job individuals carry out depending on their qualification level. The skill level is split into 4 groups, from low skill through to high skill. Firstly, looking at everyone in employment, around 28% are in jobs known as high skill, which are typically jobs such as those in managerial positions, engineers and accountants. Around 29% are in jobs known as upper middle skill, which include those such as electricians, plumbers and police officers. Around a third, or 33%, are in jobs such as lower middle skill, which include those in retail, secretarial roles or machine operatives. And finally, 10% are in low skill jobs, which include cleaners, waiters and waitresses. Considering those educated to a minimum of a degree, the majority, or 57%, are in the high-skilled jobs, which is to be expected as these jobs usually require a degree or extensive work experience. At the other end of the qualification scale, and those with no qualifications, the majority are in the bottom 2 skill groups, with 31% in low-skilled jobs and 40% in lower middle-skilled jobs. Finally, looking at those educated to around A-level and GCSE, for those to A-level, the majority are in the 2 middle groups, with around 1 in 2 or 49% of those educated to around the GCSE level in the lower middle skill group. Finally, we will look at everyone in the UK aged 22 to 64, regardless of if they have a job, and the percentage with each qualification and how this has changed since 1993. In 1993, 12% of people in the UK had a minimum of a degree, while the majority had no formal qualification. This was mainly driven by people aged 50 to 64 in 1993 who, because of the education system at the time when they were younger, they were less likely to obtain a formal qualification. Now, looking at 2010, the percentage of people having a minimum of a degree has more than doubled to 25%, while there was a large fall in the percentage with no qualifications to 11%, partly explained by the older people not having qualifications in 1993, now in the 65 and over age bracket. Another interesting thing to note is that while the percentage of people with a minimum of a degree has more than doubled, the percentage of them working in the highest skilled jobs in the country has actually fallen. In 1993, around 68% of people with a minimum of a degree worked in the highest skilled jobs, falling to 57% by the final quarter of 2010.